After yesterday's 5-0 loss against Fulham, I said, I didn't particularly want to talk too much about David Moyes. I wanted to listen to what he had to say after the game, you see. I suspected what he might say, but I wanted to hear it myself. I also thought I needed to calm down. The truth of the matter is I didn't need to calm down at all because I wasn't particularly worked up. Somebody actually said it to me. He said, you were quite calm on your review. I was. That's the thing about a thrashing. A thrashing is there's no surprises in it once it starts to happen, once it starts to unfold. I knew by half-time that we were going to lose and we were going to lose heavily. We were already 3-0 down. So I had a good hour to acclimatise to West Ham's horrible situation. So by the time I got to the video, there was no surprises there. I think in many respects, in terms of sort of losing your rag, losing your temper, it's almost worse when you score an early goal and you sit back and you invite pressure upon yourself and then the opposition get the winner. That's a surprise. That's shocking. This was no surprise. The only surprise was, at half-time it's 3-0, thought it might be 6. As I said, Fulham managed to play in third gear and still managed to score another couple of goals. So actually, I didn't really need to calm down at all. I sort of saw it for what it was at the time. And I do think the players were fatigued. I really do. But there's two things I want to particularly discuss here. It's David Moyes' excuses and his detachment from the words he says and the actions that he is completely accountable for, and how he seems to view everything that's happening at West Ham as a third party looking down. That's weird. Also need to talk about the defence just not working. We've got a defensive manager and he can't defend. I used to say this under Sam Allardyce. Look, I could take the hoofball, I could take the defending if it yielded results. I always hark back to George Graham's Arsenal. They were really good at it. Boring team, yes. Title winners, yes. I'm not saying West Ham need to win the title, but it was the chant, the whole mantra was 1-0 to the Arsenal. They were really good at keeping clean sheets. You'd have to go and dig out the statistics yourself, but they went through a season at the top level and they conceded, I think it might have even been less than 20 goals. The whole season, honestly. Mean as hell. I'll take the crappy football and the defensive football if it actually works. Well, actually, it doesn't. I honestly, we're like a colander at the back. It's awful. Irrespective of who plays, we are awful at the back. So I just wanted to say that. It ain't working. Back to what Moyes said. He alluded to the fact that the players were tired. 2 games a week. He was talking all about that. He's right. I make him right. What I disagree with is him viewing it as a detachment. He views it as if it's an accident that's befallen him, as if somehow he's the victim of a set of circumstances of which he's had no control whatsoever, as if the cosmos has conspired against him. The players are knackered because David Moyes does not rotate. And I'm not even talking about rotating, playing the second string every other week. He can start with the same team if he wants. It's just what would be really wise to do is, if you're going to do that, is maybe take 3-4 players off in the midweek game at about the 20-minute, half an hour mark. And then you can start them again next week. And then in the next game, take 3 or 4 of the other players off who played the 90 minutes. If you do that, if you manage your squad, I know it's not an exact science, but you get what I'm saying. Look, there's been a new rule that came into the Premier League a couple of seasons ago. 5 substitutes. 5 substitutes. Some managers have taken advantage of that. And because of that, it's maybe even allowed them to perhaps use less players than they did. But the players that they are using are just playing less minutes. A lot of these players are playing 70-minute games. Also, it's probably worth pointing out that the games have got longer because of the clamping down on the time wasting. Not seeing that many 90-minute games now, are we? I know, perhaps you never did, but you've seen a lot of games that might be 98 minutes and things like that. Some 100-minute games. The landscape has changed. David Moyes has not adjusted to it. I mean, he's always done this, viewed something as a detached person. It's almost like he gets to a destination and he reacts with absolute surprise. How come we find ourselves here when he's actually been plotting the course and steering the ship? Honestly, it's like me going to Tesco, going shopping and getting to Tesco. I go, for some reason, I find myself in Tesco. Well, there's a bloody good reason, because I decided to go shopping. I got in the car and I drove there. And the reason that David Moyes' squad are knackered is because he's rinsed them for everything they're worth. I mean, he must really dislike Maxwell Cornet. I know I'm obsessed with Maxwell Cornet, I understand, at the moment. Not because he's any different or any better than any other player, but it's a really good example. A really good. He made 5 subs. Maxwell Cornet wasn't one of them. I think he knows. We all know, don't we? Really. And this fatigue that he's talking about, you just think, come on, Moisey, sort this out. It's easily rectified, but do not view it as if you are a victim. He did it before. He did it with a striker, didn't he? He used to say, well, you know what, we're trying as hard as we can, but we've got no striker, Well, that's your fault, mate. That's your fault. You couldn't make Sebastian Haller work, so you sold him. You even told us in the press, the board had given me the money. It took you 18 months to buy another striker. Yet again, he spoke about it as if somehow he was the victim in all of this. Like somehow, again, like he's the pauper. I think, look, I say this now, fully aware that the scrutiny is on him from the board, or sorry, should I say, high-placed club source, that they're going to look closely at the next 2 games. I'll deal with that tomorrow, otherwise we get completely and utterly sidetracked. I'm also aware that it is really, really difficult over this period of fixture congestion to win all the time. Look, Tottenham lost, then they won. Newcastle have lost a couple, Man City, they lose, they win. Arsenal, another example. Aston Villa have done okay, but I understand. I don't expect West Ham to win every game. Let me just say that. But what I do expect is the manager to do the best he can to give West Ham every advantage to win, and he hadn't done that. And yes, I am blaming David Moyes. I know I said in the review that there was only a couple of players who had made an effort. I think Jared Bowen stood out in particular. I mentioned Soufal, and there weren't too many who made an effort. I'm not saying people were very good, but some made an effort. I think, you know what? I don't want to say, and I stopped short I sort of pulled my punches a little bit in a review of saying the players couldn't be asked. I'm glad I did. I don't want to say they couldn't be asked. Do you know what? I sort of thought back into times when when I first started working on I was going to say website then. When I first started working on a building site, we used to have to load up a load of hardcore into wheelbarrows, and we used to have to take it down this alley, really, really heavy, full of concrete, and then we used to have to take the wheelbarrow up a plank and then dump it into a skip. By the end of the day, honestly, your muscles are on fire. You're absolutely knackered. If you'd have seen me at the end of the day, you'd have probably thought, oh, look, he can't be asked. It wasn't that. I was just knackered. I was just on the brink of physical exhaustion. And I've actually got a little bit of sympathy for those players. There's a lot of players who are playing through injury. They're playing through sickness. And they are exhausted. And it's actually up to David Moyes. He's got a duty of care to take care of them. He's got a duty of care to rotate his squad. I think if I was the ownership, I'd be looking at that. As I say, I'll talk about I don't even want to say it's a 2-game ultimatum. We'll discuss it tomorrow because it sort of muddies the water. But I think if I was the owners, I'd be saying, why is everyone so fatigued? I always want to know if someone makes an excuse. I always want to know, okay, if that's not enough, what's the number? Go back to the strikers, Danny Ings. 20 games without a goal wasn't enough for Danny Ings. Okay, we know that. If I was the owner, I would have been saying, what's the number, Moisey? What's going to do it? Is it going to be 30? Eventually, we found out. We found out what that number was. David Moyes made the point that Aston Villa were ahead of us, almost uncatchable. He talked about their resources. Said what's indicated we were still building. West Ham was still building. Adding players to the squad. Indicated that we hadn't had resources enough. That was he was hinting at. West Ham haven't had resources enough to challenge top 6. I think if I was the owner, I'd be saying to Moyes, okay, right, I'm going to extrapolate what you're saying here, which is basically, you're saying you don't have enough resources, that's why you're playing the same players all the time. We know that 450 million is not enough, Moisey. What's it going to take? Because I'm going to need to know a figure. Is it 600 million? Is it $1 billion? What is it? Because then you can make a decision as the board. Because Unai Emery can certainly do it with the same amount of money. Because Aston Villa have spent pretty much exactly the same amount of money as West Ham in the time that David Moyes has been at the football club. I know they have different managers, but you get what I'm saying. So it's almost an admission saying, well, he can do it, but I can't. Well, how much is it going to take? What's it going to take us to get there? It doesn't. I remember there was a situation with. There have been points with Yarmolenko. There was a point with Yarmolenko was there, and almost Yarmolenko was someone else whose name I don't think it was Snodgrass, but they played in the same position, didn't they? There was a point 2 or 3 seasons ago where Moyes' only substitution would be Yarmolenko and one other. And I used to make the joke that he would only use his 13 players, David Moyes, 13 players. The irony is, since that time, he's probably spent over 200 million. Yet he still uses the same knackered-ass players, honestly, time and time again. So I thought that was on him. It's on him. That loss was absolutely on him. As I say, I don't expect to win every game. I really don't. I expect to lose plenty as a West Ham fan. But he complained that the players were knackered. That was his fault. As for the defence, not good enough. That's his fault as well. He decides to play defensively. But my word, at least be able to keep going. You can't spend £30 million every year on a central defender, which is pretty much what he does. You can't do that. Just keep spending money on defenders and then have a defence that's as porous as ours. We've obliterated our goal difference. I did a video yesterday morning before the game, said, look at the goal difference. Our goal difference is a little bit better than Man United's. I've got a habit of doing it as well. It's not just an isolated incident. We've been thumped many times under David Moyes. Many, many times. He's not as good at defending as he thinks he is. And I just think if you're not going to, try something else. Whatever. Do something else. That clearly wasn't working. The great irony is that towards the end of the game, we actually had a couple of chances. Once he took off some of the knackered players, it wasn't rocket science. I'm not saying Fulham wouldn't have beaten us. Fulham may have beaten us anyway yesterday. But if he'd actually chosen some players, even just 4 or 5 other players who were fit and who were sharp, then I don't think they put 5 past us. I really don't. They did it at Cantor. Listen, before I go, I've forgotten again. Sorry, it's what happens when you have a little rant. Today, the special offer, the Hammers Chat offer on the Hammers Chat store is an absolute corker, it has to be said. It's the final day, final offer, runs for 24 hours. Patrons get an additional 10% off everything in the shop. Now, just to make the point here, our Hammers Chat patron addicts, get 30% off anyway. So if you're an addict, you're getting 40% off. Honestly, it's a lot of the stuff's going at cost, basically. We're doing it to clear. We're going to end up giving stuff away, quite frankly, with the Skamaka stuff and all the rest of it. But anyway, I'm not talking about that. We're talking about the good stuff that you want now. The beer mats, the T-shirts, the scarves, the socks. Did you manage to grab the socks? The socks are great, by the way. The socks, I got to say, even though West Ham lost, I'm still loving my socks. I do actually have other pairs that I wear, by the way. These are just here for video purposes. Go and check it out. An extra 10% off for all patrons. Might be a good idea. If you haven't thought of doing so, pop along, join Patreon. Patreon.com/HammersChat. If you join now, do that before your shopping spree, and you may well find yourself, you've probably saved so much money that you pay for your Patreon subscription. We've also got another offer, which is 16% off if you sign up for the year. If you sign up for the year now, 16% off. We've also got a free trial. I mean, we've got a lot of offers on. Go and check it out. They're all the offers. There's a link to the Hammers Chat store, a link to Patreon. Go and check out both. Click on both links. Check out the offers that we've got. I'll be back tomorrow once I've scratched below the surface and found out a little more about this veiled threat that David Moyes has possibly only got 2 more games left.